But, excuse me, I'm sorry. You can tell both of them almost did a Queen Elizabeth II in their pants. You know, I don't usually do potty humor, but around the office, you know, when somebody's got to get out of a meeting or something, they're like, I'm sorry, it'll just be a Rockefeller. You know, that means a quick, you know, minute or two. But sometimes they go, hey, I got to do a Queen Elizabeth II, number 2. And, all right, folks, I apologize to our radio station. It's a very family-friendly, clean show. But when I started imitating the royals, the rabble filth and looketh them running around like vermin in the streets. I can't wait till our world government extermination force is in place to remove as many of them as possible. Oh, I love sucking off of them, but goodness, I like to go out to the theater dressed up like an effeminate peacock with all of my medals festooning my breast, with my Haglet wearing a giant crown on her head. But to actually see them turn against me, I guess all those PR shows we finance telling them how weak and pathetic we are aren't working. They actually know that we're the ones sucking everything out of them. I just lectured them last month that they shouldn't take a hot bath, but I have royal trains and 77 aircraft and 94 palaces, but they shouldn't be able to take a hot bath. And I'm so pleased that the old ladies have to ride in the buses to stay warm now because they can't pay for their gas allowance. But you know, we're heating all of our palaces quite nicely, and after we've exterminated all of you, we're going to have plenty. We are back live. I mentioned some of this yesterday, but I want to get back into it because I need to write an article about this or make a video about it. Because for 15 years, I've known about the government worldwide in every Western nation, from Australia to the U.S., from Canada to England, from Germany to Denmark, taking people's blood at birth and putting it in a UN-financed global government database. And finally, lawsuits got filed by some of my listeners in Minnesota over this and in Texas. And they've won, and they found out that, yes, it's an Army database. Well, it's more than that. Look, I was sent the documents almost 15 years ago by a nurse in San Antonio. And Jason Douglas wrote a great article, but he's going off what the media said. You know, 2002, Texas started taking blood. No. 39 years ago, worldwide, they began taking blood from all newborns and lying and saying it's got to be sent to the health department to do a blood test. They take 2 sets. They do the blood test at the hospital or send it to a lab. That blood goes and is being kept and sold to pharma companies, and they've had cases where they patented certain proteins and things in your blood, and then when you go to get genetic treatment later, guess what? They've already got you on file. And it's for eugenics and bioweapons development. That's all come out. So it's so frustrating that even now that this is admitted, that I must not have done my job because people don't even know the tip of the iceberg. But you know, there's a whitewash out of KXAM. The Statesman had one. And they go on to admit that in the last lawsuit the government settled, they admitted that they were selling it to the Army. Well, it's not just that. It's a state law. You know, they claim, oh, it's a state law. We test the blood for the diseases. But it's a state law to get your blood to give to the Army. It's illegal what they're doing with it, but they have the law about collecting it. And the law is on the hospitals. You as a parent don't have to do it. It's a law that they have to attempt it. And there's now a class action suit been filed over newborn babies' blood, going to the Pentagon, going to private companies. And at the end of it, the government says it's preposterous that we've got a DNA database. When they say a minute before on the TV piece and in the paper that that's what the lawsuit showed. But those documents are all public now. I mean, this stuff, anybody did the research, it's all out there. Okay? For 39 years, if you were born in New Zealand, Australia, England, Canada, the United States, Western Europe, we've already been under a global government. It's all standardized. We've got Head Start. They've got Secure Start, you know, in Europe and other areas. We've got telescreens, barking orders. They've got them going in England. I mean, it's the same deal. It's continuity of agenda. And people better wake up to that. And here's another one. The Texas Tribune lawsuit alleges DSHS sold baby DNA samples. That's admitted. You can't get the mainstream media around here to report on what's admitted. It'd be like if the space shuttle took off and you know, flew into orbit, they'd say, allegedly the space shuttle took off. Or if the sun came up, they have a headline, allegedly the sun came up. But then somebody goes on a message board and says they're Osama bin Laden and they're going to attack, and the AP and Reuters run headlines, bin Laden says he's going to attack, and then later they say this came from a message board. See, they're always playing it down. And I'm not saying these writers at KXAN or the Statesman are government agents. They've already bought into tyranny and that this is all for their own good and government loves them and they're childlike in their mentality. So, well, it can't be true. They sold it secretly. That's a little scary. So even though it's admitted they did, we'll just say it's alleged. So we all feel better. You know, we don't want to create mistrust of the government because civically the right thing to do is to teach trust. You know, they teach in journalism school in this country to teach trust of the government. What is Congressman Cohen trying to shut down Jesse Ventura's TV show say in his editorial? He says that, you know, we've got to have a media that teaches people to trust the government. That's how out of touch they are. The government thinks you're cattle. They stick their hands down your pants. They put you in scanners. They're taking blood samples at checkpoints warrantlessly under federal grants. Local police are being federalized. They're spying on everything you do. It's out of control, and it needs to stop. You know, we're about to go to break and come back with Senator-elect Rand Paul, hopefully, because he's a busy schedule. I do just want to remind folks, this show is listener-supported. If you believe in what we're doing, go to prisonplanet.tv. You can get 5+ months free every Christmas. And if you can also go create an account, make a username passcode, give it as a gift to friends and family in an e-card or written in a card. All my films, the live show, higher quality podcast, the video streams, $5.95 a month. Or get a year membership and get a huge discount, the equivalent of 5.3 months free, prisonplanet.tv. And you can also get your orders in at Infowars.com for hard copies of all the films.
Of the information war, it's Alex Jones.
All right, he's promised to come back in the new year for longer. We've only got him for about 10, 15 minutes right now. How amazing. Senator-elect Rand Paul going to the Senate. Senator, I just want to say congratulations to you.
Well, thank you. It's good to be with you again, Alex.
My first question is, they threw everything they could at you, one of the biggest demonization campaigns in modern history. It failed. What does that say about the dinosaur corporate establishment media?
Well, I think it's amazing that, you know, not only did they throw the kitchen sink at us, they made up a few things along the way. But what I would say is that the mainstream media doesn't control the process anymore. I think there are so many other outlets where people are getting their news. Talk radio is a big one. The Internet's another big one. And I think also that the scare tactics of saying, oh, so-and-so is going to take away or cut off your grandmother's Social Security doesn't work anymore because people realize that if we do nothing, no one will have Social Security, no one will have Medicare, because the politicians have basically spent all the money, and there has to be some reform. Whether you like it or not, there's going to have to be some kind of entitlement reform.
Well, moving quickly through these questions, again, you're gracious to join us. Obviously, I'm sure you know that Cass Sunstein at the White House, the commissioner of the FCC said freedom without government control of media was an aberration. They're really moving in right now to try to curtail free speech. What's your concern with that, Senator?
Well, it's funny. I've been concerned about the fairness doctrine ever since I was a teenager, and I can remember writing to a conservative leader back then, and the conservative leader said, oh, we need a fairness doctrine because the liberals are controlling all the radio and the television. Now it's funny, it's the opposite. Now that there's more conservative commentators, the liberals want to stifle the conservatives. But I think free speech is free speech, whether it's a liberal commentator or a conservative commentator, and that we shouldn't have the government involved in deciding what we hear on the radio waves, what we read in the newspaper, what we write, what is written in books.
Senator, obviously you're watching the lame duck Congress try to legalize illegal aliens with the DREAM Act, trying to further gut society, trying to pass the food safety bill, which was written by Big Agra to shut down local farms and ranches. Boy, I tell you, they are really showing how disconnected they are. Are you going to try to lead in the Senate to make sure that whatever horrible things they do, like Obamacare and other things, are repealed?
Absolutely. And the other thing is you got to wonder why, when we just had such a big historic mandate of an election, that they're trying to ram all these things through in a lame duck. Of course, we know why, but the thing is we shouldn't let them do it. The people have spoken and elected, nearly 100 new people in the House, 13 new people in the Senate, that we need to wait till the electoral process has been allowed to occur and the new people get there. So, yes, anything they try to do in this session, I think we will try to reverse. And I think that you're already hearing people. People are saying that let's wait for the new people. That's what Senator DeMint said today. Let's wait for the new senators.
Absolutely. They've certainly been rebuked in their activities, but they're like a bunch of drunken sailors trying to steal as much as they can. Speaking of your father, headline, Ron Paul, author of In the Fed, to lead panel overseeing central bank. Are you going to join with your father in an attempt to get rid of the private Federal Reserve System that won't tell Congress where the trillions went?
Well, how exciting is it to have the probably historically the #1 critic of the Fed being in charge of oversight of the Fed? That's got to excite people throughout the country, and I think a lot of good will come of it. I think the first thing we have to do is try to audit the Fed and have a real, meaningful audit of the Fed. I was amazed at the coalition my dad put together. Over 330 people in the House signed on to it, 30-some-odd people in the Senate, and yet, like so many legislative shenanigans, they stole victory from him, and they gave us a watered-down audit. But even the watered-down audit, we're getting some information about what the Fed bought. But, boy, he could really get through, if he could get through a real audit, I will be supporting and introducing that in the Senate as well. So I think the potential for us shedding some light on what the Fed does is enormous.
A lot of folks obviously want your father to run for president. Are you thinking about, or are you getting questions, Senator-elect, about running for president yourself?
Well, no, but it's very complimentary to get such a question. But, I think I haven't even really been sworn into my first office, so it might be premature for me to be thinking about it.
Well, it was the same thing with George Washington. He went right from general to president. I mean, we need doctors and farmers and people to be senators and presidents. We don't need, the lawyers. I mean, it's so great that you and your father are both doctors. I mean, you're there right now seeing patients today in between this interview. Your victory is our victory, and I just want to commend you.
Well, I appreciate that, and I know you've got a lot of loyal listeners, and we hear from them, and we meet them across the country and all across Kentucky. I end up running into your loyal fans. But the interesting thing is that we're going to do some things that have never been done before, in the sense that as soon as I get there, I'm going to talk about and introduce a bill that will cut a significant amount of spending. We have a bill we're working on that will cut $500 billion worth of spending, and that's where we've got to start. And I think the American people are ready to hear it, because the American people know that we're mortgaging our future to China, that we're printing up the money to pay for these massive debts, and that ultimately, as the day of reckoning comes closer and closer, we are in fear of destroying our country if we don't do something about this. And so I think people are no longer afraid, at least I'm not afraid, to go ahead and introduce significant spending cuts and say, look, if you're serious about this problem, you need to vote for this.
Absolutely.
We'll have a discussion.